We have all been there before, where we have felt like we are stuck at the intermediate plateau of learning a language. We don't know how to overcome it. I have been able to reach fluency in my 7th language this year, and I'm here to tell you how I would approach getting over the plateau itself. And all of this is based around my Mindful Fluency Method, which is a method that I use to coach language learners in order to help them learn faster, but also help them get fluent on their own terms more sustainably. With transitioning from intermediate to advanced, in general, it has to do with a lack of different topics that we feel comfortable with. So if you just think about fluency as the range of topics that you are comfortable with, then it automatically becomes more manageable to think about, okay, how is my current approach to language learning blocking me from becoming comfortable in different topics? I always see what kind of topics inside, for example, a B2 or B1 textbook are covered. What do I already feel comfortable speaking about? What topics could I already improve on if I am familiar with them, but I don't have necessarily all the vocabulary to talk about them? What topics am I completely unfamiliar with? Once you, one by one, get to tackle each of those topics in a pretty generalized way, then that is when you can build confidence to go even deeper with each topic if you want to in the intermediate phase to then get you to the advanced phase. For example, I had never talked about anything science related, but I used my textbook to figure out, okay, one of the topics for being at a B2, talk about science, as in what is very relevant to our world right now. Let's think about renewable energy. Let's think about sustainability, right? These are things that I definitely wouldn't feel like I was able to talk about when stuck at the intermediate plateau. But actually understanding, okay, this is the topic that I need to be comfortable with. And because there is a natural interest for me to want to talk about in my native language, probably a good sign that I would like to talk about it in my target language as well. And then getting a whole new substack of vocabulary, as well as a few sort of grammar points to help me express myself in this subtopic more eloquently is what I need to do. And simply just building up being comfortable. And by doing so and pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone, like with topics, it really does add a different sense of cognitive load, because I know that we can get really used to the same topics and saying the same things the same way. But by doing a different topic and concentrating on one for even the month, right, of your current language learning routine, that's really when you can go into new territory more safely. What I would also do, especially with the goal of wanting to get fluent, is including speaking every single day. But now that doesn't mean speaking like a conversation lesson for a full 30 minutes each day. Not sustainable for me, and also just not enjoyable. That is why I always use the strategy inside my free training of the 3-minute speaking fluency formula that really helped me build a solo speaking habit that got me to, again, understanding, hey, how can I activate this vocabulary, these different turns of phrases, this new topic in general, especially if you find yourself freezing or hesitating when you're talking in your language, then do grab that training inside the pinned comment below. But again, this is just another outlet for being able to solidify all of the information that you are gaining from concentrating on one topic itself. As for how long I would stick to a certain topic, it really would just depend on how much I am investing into how much vocabulary I'm learning under that topic, how familiar I am already with it. I would probably set up 3 to 4 weeks changing a topic, especially because I would be at the intermediate plateau. I don't want to feel too rushed, but I also want to make sure that the topics that I'm doing are still, for the most part, enjoyable to investigate and not stick to one for like a whole 2 or 3 months, right? What I would also do is really be aware of how I am speaking and how I am writing. It kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit before, which is that we usually get stuck in expressing ourselves the exact same way with the exact same vocabulary, with the exact same word order and structures, etc. And what we need to be able to do to get over an intermediate plateau is not only passively recognize more different structures, right, inside of something we're listening to or something we're reading, but also be able to produce in different ways the same idea. For example, I used to have a habit of just using modal verbs instead of actually conjugating the verb itself whenever I wasn't sure on the conjugation. So if I said in Italian, I could run, right? Potevo correre is what I would say. If I forgot how to say, the past participle of to run, noticing these patterns and being aware of how I routinely express myself, I would push myself to then look up the different form if I feel like I had forgotten, just a quick Google search. Properly conjugate and use that past tense correctly instead of only relying on potevo. So think about in your own language learning, is there anything that you feel uncomfortable with that you know that yes, you should look up, but that it's easy for you to just lean on something else that helps you avoid reproducing a more advanced structure? What I would also do is include in my list of vocabulary synonyms, because again, it's not only structures that we continuously use in order to stay at the intermediate plateau, it's also the fact that we just use the same vocabulary over and over. So instead of saying happy or content, you could also say really excited or thrilled or even over the moon. And that idiom actually brings me to my next point, which is really including more idioms and turns of phrases in your expression of how you either speak, write. These really give you cultural knowledge. A lot of things that can trip language learners up to is not understanding enough of the culture in order to understand more of the nuances of the language. If I were to say, hi, how are you in German, then not understanding the cultural awareness of what I just said, I would think it's really strange that Germans just give me a whole long narrative about how their day actually went. Now, I'm American, and if I asked the exact same thing to an American, they would understand that I probably am not asking for exactly how they feel, right? So there's already a difference in how one simple introductory phrase between German and English can be interpreted by the culture. So there are so many other nuances that go way past the how are you question. So after that, what I would then do is layer writing on top of what I was doing with working on my topics, because being able to produce and catch bad habits as well, that is also keeping you at the intermediate plateau, are more recognizable, I have found, inside of writing. So I would always write maybe 200, 250 words, that's about a page and a half, about my topic that I was concentrated on for the week. I would use some of the vocabulary that I was learning about, as well as some of the idioms, some of the different ways of saying things that I wasn't sure I was producing 100% right, but I still got to produce inside of writing. And because I was writing instead of speaking, I could have a little bit more time to think about, okay, how do I want to phrase this? And then also just have another way of documenting my progress. I would then get this corrected by either my teacher or also by AI if I didn't have a lesson going on that week, and then put the whole corrected phrase inside of my flashcards. I love the chunking method where you don't just take one word out of context and put it on a flashcard. I love different longer phrases that you can put, and then that also helps me remember, okay, let me review my flashcards about 2 times a week, and I can really drill the corrections, get myself out of those bad habits, phrasing things the same way, but also being unsure if I'm using a grammatical concept the right way. I can just see it on my flashcards, take that example, and keep on improving instead of feeling that I'm just stuck at the same place at the plateau. But let me know what you found most helpful from this video, how you are approaching thinking about overcoming the language learning intermediate plateau that you're at. Make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help other learners find me through the algorithm, and we'll see each other in another video soon.